Hey Zaid, welcome to the Quantum Health Connection podcast. We're so excited to have you here with us.
Yeah, thanks to the both of you. I'm excited for an awesome conversation on whatever we cover. It's probably going to be a deep and eclectic rabbit hole, but very stoked.
Oh, those are the best ones. So let's go. I know, Zaid, that because I just looked over your website thoroughly, but I've been following you for a while on Instagram. And one thing that really stands out for me is you just have a lot of passion and you don't mince your words. And so that really speaks to me. I like people who aren't afraid to speak the truth, whatever your version of the truth is, but also the universal, objective truth. One of the things that stood out to me is that you had a very a tragic situation with your father and his health issues, then you lost him. And so that was the catalyst for you that really inspired you to dig into, right, all of the aspects of health and find what it is it that makes us healthy. And that led you to circadian and quantum biology. So I'm curious about that. If you'd share a little bit about that with us and, where you're at now with the recovery and the grief.
Yeah, so for me, it's a pivotal moment in my life. I often say that it was the worst thing that happened to me, but then on the other hand, this is where a little bit of the paradox in life comes in. It's like it was also kind of the best thing that happened to me in the sense that it led me down this trajectory. And so for me, growing up as an athlete, competitive soccer player, wanted to play professionally ever since I was 4 years old due to his influence. That was very hard on me. And so I was even halfway across the world when that happened. He suffered two heart attacks within the span of a year. Second one being a myocardial infarction, which is called the widowmaker according to mainstream medicine. And so that was a time in my life where I was kind of finding myself and trying to deal with death and mortality and all these different things. But it led me down as a very specific path of wanting to be obsessed about health because as an athlete you're always interested to some degree because performance depends on your health, but that was really the turning point for me where I was like full on obsession. And so I went down the routine rabbit holes of like nutrition and detox and supplementation, all that stuff, eventually finding circadian biology through Dr. Jack Cruz's work with his episode with Rick Rubin and Andrew Huberman. And then from there it's taken on a life of its own. And I think that the work that I do in terms of helping educate people is very therapeutic in a real way because of course you have a lot of lonely nights, you have a lot of days where you doubt various things, but for me I think that's been an immense help because it allows me to then pass on a lot of wisdom that I've gained from that experience. And I think most importantly it allows me to help people avoid that kind of experience. So there are a lot of things to it, but I think that's been very helpful for me, and I've been through a lot in terms of that experience.
Yeah. Big shifts like that can really change the tide and the trajectory of our life path, right? And what we're meant to do. And I love the conversation about you mentioned about how that was a pivotal moment for you to be like, okay, what can I do to keep my body healthy, right? So this same trajectory doesn't happen to me, right? I'm sure that was in the back of your mind, right? Because I look at, we look at the health of our parents, grandparents, and you say, okay, what can I do to keep my body as healthy as I can to not have the same afflictions, right? So that's amazing, and that you took it in such a positive direction, right? Which is
Mm.
really great. And I like how you also mentioned how what you thought was health to then what you became to realize was really true health, like really more of the foundation you set. Talk a little bit more about that, like, because I'm sure when you probably started getting healthy, same thing with me, I'm like, oh, it's diet, it's exercise, it's calorie restriction, it's running marathons, it's supplements, and then it's like cleanses and detoxes. And then I was like, well, none of that's helping me. So yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
curious.
It's definitely been an interesting journey. I think that I'm kind of like I have the mindset of not really falling into any fads per se. I think that for
Mm.
me, first principles thinking was always a thing that I had in the back of my mind, even if I didn't consciously know about it. And so, going down the first principles of nutrition, studying the work of various individuals in that sphere, Weston A. Price, hunter-gatherers, all that stuff. And then the same thing across the line with exercise and sleep, I think is a big one for me in my past. That's all stuff that has been influential. It's been kind of I've been adding pieces to the puzzle, so to speak. And so when I came across the circadian stuff, I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense when you add all of this together. And lo and behold, there is a valid and very comprehensive circadian explanation for all of these things, whether it's sleep architecture, nutrition according to what season you're in. So I think I found a lot of the answers when I came across the circadian stuff, but of course there was a process to it. It's not like I stumbled upon this work and I knew everything about it. Constant education, constant improvement in terms of my epistemology. And from that point forward, I think that's something that I always carry with me because I'm a constant learner and I'm always obsessed. And so obsession means that, you're always focused on it 24/7. And it's a very cool thing, and I'm very grateful for it for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of the 24/7, you have the 2 a.m. podcast, which I kind of laughed a little bit about because it's so anti-circadian. I'm like, wait, what? It's just the name you have, I know, but what is the name? What is it about?
I mean, it's eclectic. We talk about different health stuff. We've had Mark Bell on recently. We've had my midwife couple who has been fantastic, Lisa and Richard Oxenham. It's kind of going for that vibe of like those late night conversations when you're camping around friends and family.
Okay.
And so there's a little bit of education, there's a little bit of fun, a little bit of banter, of course. But either way, I think it's just a good way for us to get our perspectives across and have cool people on.
Mm.
I love the journey too of the evolution and like the never expanding learning that you're on, because I feel like I'm on the same journey too. Like I just keep growing and growing, and the expansion keeps happening and happening, keep learning more and delving deeper and deeper. And it's just like it's really cool to be there and to be so open. I feel like I'm so open to newer ideas than I used to be. So that's a beautiful evolution too. And I'm sure you are too, because you can't not be when you're living this kind of lifestyle. I feel like things just come more naturally, and then all of a sudden you're open to all the things, like, and it's just, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, my favorite word that I mention often is autodidact. And so I pride myself on being self-taught. I don't feel like I have to go to a large institution or one of these ivory towers with education to find the truth, because ultimately it's 2025. We have the internet, we have open minds, we can learn about these things and try to create a very comprehensive understanding and a holistic one too.
Yeah.
What sorts of improvements in your own health, say, did you experience once you started to embrace and then apply the quantum biology principles?
I was grateful to have a good bill of health in general from the start. So nothing really major. I do have some autoimmunity, a little bit of psoriasis here and there. And so for me, I think, reducing flare-ups has been a big thing. I've always been a big sunbather, even before I got into the circadian work. So that's helped immensely. The darkness at night was a really big shift for me. And I think that's, it's helped with deep sleep, REM sleep, not waking up feeling groggy. A lot of these things that have been very instrumental for me, along with other things like, a consistent breakfast. I used to be an avid skipper of breakfast just naturally, didn't really feel like eating, but understanding leptin sensitivity, that's been a big help. So, a few things around the gut, a few things around autoimmunity, but either way, I'm making some significant progress with the circadian stuff in general.
That's awesome. I'm interested about the psoriasis. So you had that before the circadian stuff, and did that clear up, or?
It didn't clear up fully. I think that, of course, there are a lot of moving pieces to it. I think there is a genetic component, mitochondrial component. My mom has psoriasis. I assume some parts of her family have that as well. So that's still stuff that I'm trying to iron out and really completely heal. But either way, I think I've gotten so much help from just the sunbathing alone, darkness at night, and I think there is some cross link between the gut health and then whether it be non-native EMF in the environment or something like that, food choices, all of that stuff is going to come into play. But either way, I mean, it's just a progress in work as always.
Definitely the blue light for sure. Absolutely. And getting the dark at night is going to help. Maybe you want to share a little bit more. I'll just share a personal story. My mom, she was having some some skin issues around her eye just recently. And I said, Mom, I said, you're always on that iPad. And is it red? And she goes 2 weeks later, 2 weeks. I said, make sure it's red every time you're on it, or the blue blocker's on. And it was better. And I was like, there is a link there with that, like, for sure. So I don't know if you want to chat more about that, or if you have any other insights about that, but there absolutely is. Yeah.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to understand that light and every light wavelength in general has some sort of effect on the body, a fundamental one at that. So when we're talking about isolated blue or isolated UV, those are short wavelengths that are very high energy, relatively speaking, compared to red and infrared, which are longer ones. And so if you're staring at a blue lit screen at night, with the screen like a few inches away from your face, that's going to have a bigger impact, especially from the perspective of the inverse square law, when it comes to native EMF, non-native EMF, just light in general, which falls into that category. So, whenever people talk about melasma or hyperpigmentation or hypopigmentation, I'm very big on trying to educate around the light component because it's fundamental. you can heal hyper and hypopigmentation with the proper approach to the light and dark cycle. And you can also cause it through an improper approach to those things. And so for me, these are fundamental things to understand that most people do just not, they don't have it in their mind in general.
Mhm. Yeah, no, 100%. And what would you say to somebody who's got like a skin issue? Just my mind's on this skin issue stuff right now because you have dealt with it. Who's got a skin issue and they're fearful of like sunlight and supporting it using sunlight, because I feel like even my father-in-law, I know he's got psoriasis. It's way better in the summer than it is in the winter every year, every single year. And I'm like, oh, it's the light. They need it. So anyway, what would you say about that?
It's difficult to try to get across to a lot of people. I think there's a scientific component to it. You know, there's
Hmm.
a lot of science that can back up the fact that full spectrum sunlight and darkness at night is fundamental to improving any skin condition. You have the historical perspective with the work of Auguste Rollier or Niels Ryberg-Finsen in the early 1900s with their work on heliotherapy, you know, healing lupus vulgaris, which is tuberculosis of the skin. It's kind of insane when you look at the before and afters. There is the philosophical perspective. There's the religious perspective. You know, if you're more, if you believe more so in God as opposed to being an atheist or like an agnostic, then you are more of the mind that God created a perfect creature to be on the earth, right? And so the sun is an intricate, an integral part of that. And so it just depends on what perspective the person most resonates with. But I think it's just undeniable when you put all of these pieces together and then start to go down those rabbit holes, because fundamentally the skin is a circadian organ that not only senses light but also uses light in various ways, whether, you know, we're talking about melanocytes, keratinocytes, you name it. It's inextricably tied and married to that whole discussion.
The
Hmm.
skin being the largest organ of elimination and our barrier, between us and everything else. And so there's so much embedded in there. I had, interestingly, this outbreak of eczema. I remember Vanessa recently, and I'd never had that since I was young, and it was the worst I'd ever had it. And I thought, is it stress? Is it I'm getting plenty of light? So there's so many interesting variables, but I did use, and I wanted to ask your opinion about this, Zaid. I did use some a little bit of UV light in this like one thing that I got for a dog, my past dog who had a skin issue. And then I did a lot of extra light outside as far as just getting that red light, and that helped it. But it was pretty gnarly. I don't know if I was clearing something from a homeopathic remedy, but what's your general protocol, like high level, for people who have things like psoriasis and eczema, and how do you see it also from an emotional and spiritual perspective?
I mean, the emotional and spiritual is a deep rabbit hole that I really don't feel confident speaking on, because there could be so many different things, whether it's trauma, you know, sexual abuse in the past. There's just so much to that. But in terms of like the overall protocol, I think we have to be very comprehensive. And so the light in a dark cycle being one unit, we have to understand that there are various things from a lifestyle standpoint that can set us up for success. And so, of course, we talk about watching sunrise, timing your wake up around that time, making sure to get most of the skin exposed, especially affected areas, to that morning spectrum. And that's what will set the circadian skin clocks correct and create circadian alignment systemically. And so if we're talking about the skin barrier, that's the starting point in my mind. And then from there, you can get into progressively, you know, sunbathing when UVA comes out, UVA rise. Then when UVA and UVB are together, the midday portion is, I think, important. But there's a lot of nuance involved with that, of course, and how to do it properly. And then, of course, you head into, you know, watching sunset. I'm a firm believer that different spectrums of light at different times of day offer various circadian signals and benefits. And so you kind of want to catch that crescendo and just difference in light spectrum until you
Hmm.
get to the you know, nightfall portion where it's dark mode in my mind. And so using the incandescents, using beeswax candles, making it dark first and foremost is going to be very important. But either way, it's going to take time. It's going to take consistency. And it just depends on what kind of skin manifestation you're dealing with, because I've come across people who have vitiligo that's very severe that, you know, they burn within 30 seconds of exposure to UV. And so you have to be very intentional about that. And so,
Very slow.
yeah, in that example, I mean, you want to really hammer the morning time first, and
Mhm.
then you want to even start with like 10 seconds of UV exposure and then slowly build up over time. So just depends on the context and the individual.
Yeah, no, that's good. That definitely all that light stuff is going to be so supportive. And yeah, the spiritual stuff, that's a bigger question when it comes to skin. But Heather and I don't know if you know this, they were both homeopaths. So what Heather said before is an aggravation from like a homeopathic remedy. We see it from a homeopathic perspective, when stuff comes out on the skin, as a very good sign and something that we never want to suppress, because that means that the pathology, I guess, or the disturbance in the organism is moving to the skin layer, which is the most superficial. But then it is a very hard thing once it gets there to get it back in balance. Like, it takes a lot of time, because it is a tough thing to crack, sometimes, skin issues. So, but yeah, I see it that way. Like, it's something good. Something is coming out, whether it's mental, emotional, or whether it's physical, moving through the body. So I do see skin stuff as like the outermost layer, and a really good sign that things are moving in a healthy direction a lot of times. So yeah.
Interesting. I never thought about it that way, but that's a very interesting take. I think
Yeah, it's
it makes sense. It makes
yeah,
sense.
it's actually Herring's law, if you don't know, if you're Constantine Herring, and you'll see it in circadian and quantum biology practices too. So when people start utilizing the sun more, they might get some sort of skin things that are coming out, and then they get panicked a little bit and nervous, but it actually means, oh, it's coming out of your body, out of your organs. You don't want the stuff to be stuck in your organs. You want it to come to the surface and come up and out. So one of the directions of cure is from the internal to the external. Like, that would also be true if like eczema was like, say your chest, right? And then it moved down to like your hands, or if it was on like your torso and it moved down to your feet, it would also be another direction, like, so that's moving out of the body. So yeah, it's interesting stuff to look into.
Yeah. And I haven't really dived into homeopathy, but my wife is kind of big on it. She's learning about it, but this is a rabbit hole that I'll definitely go down for sure.
Yeah, it's a great rabbit hole. It's one of my favorites.
What do
Awesome.
you think, Zaid, about using like UV or like the red lamps and all that? Because I know you'd like to be able to have people not have to utilize a lot of supplements. I understand that from what I saw on your position on your website. But then also, if people need some sort of like extra red, infrared, whatever, do you utilize those things or recommend them or no?
I do in general. I think they're valuable tools, but they're tools at that, and so they definitely have limitations. Obviously, the classic saying that Cruz says is there is no replacement for the sun, and that's just obvious wisdom. So, for me, if somebody can't do that, or if they just want something supplemental, then for sure I'll recommend like an EMR Tech, red or infrared panel. But then there's also a proper way to use it, an improper way, and so we'll go down the list in terms of like sticking with use during the daytime, because the high lux and intensity of that light at night will potentially suppress melatonin. There's a bunch of stuff to that, but I am in favor of it as a tool. But again, people will catch on to that, and there's a lot of people who are selling it as a fad, really. And so
Mhm.
they won't understand that there are limitations to that. And so it could actually make problems worse in some scenarios. But again, it just depends on the context for sure.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's a tool to utilize, say, through winter, like where I live in New York. It's a little bit tougher to be outside, and you're getting infrared, yeah, but you're not going to be, out there as much as you'd like to be, like as I am through, spring through fall. I'm out here like as much as possible. Like, I'm a good, somebody asked me on my Instagram, how much time do you spend outside? I'm like, well, it depends on the season, right? But like in the summer, I could be outside for 10 hours a day. In the spring and fall too, it can be that much, because I can work out here, I can be out here all day. But in the winter, that's just not possible. So getting some more infrared in other ways is helpful, I think, in that context. But it makes me curious. I had asked somebody else about what they think of Spurdy, and I love EMR Tech has just come out with those amazing light panels that have both, right? They have the UV and they have the infrared. That's really cool. And of course, we don't want people to say, oh, I can just use this panel instead of the sun. I mean, never. Like, the sun is always the ultimate way to go. This is an extra if you need some extra support, right? But I'm curious what you think of like Spurdy vitamin D lamps in the wintertime. Because at first I had asked somebody else this, and I'm curious your thoughts. Like, when I first was learning about quantum and circadian, I had gotten a Spurdy vitamin D lamp because I learned about light and how good it was for our health. And then my intuition went to, I don't think I should use this in the winter. Like, why am I sending my body the signal that I have UV light when there is no UVB light in my environment? So then it didn't make any sense. And then last year, might have been like around the time of like February, I started to get a little bit more, the UV light was coming back, but I wasn't able to be outside. So then I was like, I feel the need and the call. So I'm very intuitive with those things, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a slippery slope with isolated UV, because if you don't have the red and infrared to pair with it, then in my
Always.
opinion, that's definitely causing some form of damage.
Mhm.
And some people might disagree, but look, at the end of the day, nature doesn't provide isolated wavelengths, and so especially the shorter
Never.
ones that are higher energy. So for me, using a Spurdy is kind of like it's not necessary at all, and it provides more risk than it does benefit.
Mm,
I think the seasonal perspective has been very important for me. And so we're kind of looking at the body from it's obviously a seasonal circadian system. And so it shifts program according to what season you're in, depending on whether you live in, a native land that you're born in, whether you are, at the equator or farther away from it. So there's a lot of context there, but I think that if we understand various things like, okay, melatonin can bind to the vitamin D receptor. It's a very
yeah.
interesting concept, which means that you can get a lot of the benefits that D3 provides when you maximize endogenous melatonin during the wintertime through various means. Um, then we understand that the body is very sophisticated and wise about this whole discussion. So for me, it's as long as you have the right principles in place universally across seasons, you can get the most out of this work. And then there's also the discussion of cold exposure. Dr. Tom Seeger has been putting this on my radar a lot more, but the discussion of cold exposure, creating biophotons in the UV range, especially UVB, interacting with sulfated cholesterol, potentially leading to maybe some increase in D3 production, or at least maintaining what you already have storage wise. So there's a lot to it, but I think this just we have to understand that we are a seasonal, cyclical circadian system that is designed to adapt and shift with the seasons.
Mhm.
Yeah, 100%. And if you do ever want, I always recommend if anybody had a Spurdy to use it with an open window or outside or with a red light therapy panel and all that. So it's not just isolated. That's how I would recommend using it, of course, if that was their choice. But yeah, I totally hear you on the melatonin, and maximizing that through winter is the best thing. And if I could get my butt in a cold plunge, maybe one day, I don't know. I seem to hate the cold. I have a complete aversion. And then I also feel like that's important to listen to your body when it says, this is not for you, So I don't know. So for me, that doesn't work, but I'm very dark through winter. So yeah, I definitely maximizing as much as that as possible. Yeah.
And by the way, one other thing that recently came across my radar, I don't know if you guys follow Dr. Roger Sayholt, but he's been posting a lot more of these filters that actually show you infrared in the environment. And so he's doing before and after pictures, like a normal picture you take on your iPhone, and then one with the filter over the lens. And it's astonishing how much infrared is available when you just have an open window or you're just
Yeah.
outside.
Oh yeah.
Like through these filters, infrared shows up as the color red. And so you see it quite literally bathed in the entire environment. So even just doing those things can make a huge difference from a seasonal perspective too.
One of the biggest like quantum hacks is just opening the window. I'm like, just open your window. Like when you're driving in a car, when you're, inside your house, like sit next to an open window. It is such a huge, like, it's not a hack really, but it's just like such a simple thing that you can do. And it's like makes such a big impact. So yeah, I love that. That's really cool. I'll have to look him up.
Yeah,
So
he's
you
great.
work, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say he's great. He takes a more, he's come from a more centralized perspective. I think he's like quadruple board certified or something like that. Crazy. But but yeah, he definitely is coming around to a lot more of the circadian and light stuff for
How
sure.
do you spell his last name?
I think it's Sehuelt. I might be wrong on this.
Oh, okay. Okay. That
Cool.
sounds, yeah, I think I just briefly saw that online, but I want to look into it more. So you work with men primarily, right?
It's actually more even now. I think I'm working a lot more with women, believe it or not.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, so I definitely have more experience on that end because, there's always going to be a limitation if you just work with men or women. I think you need to see both sides of the aisle, really.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%. I'm curious because I know you have you had recently had a child, right? You have a little family going on, right? And so how's that going? Like you're living like that whole quantum and circadian life. That's so cool because my kids, they miss that. Like I feel like not that I have any regrets about it, but when I found this work, my kids were older and it's like harder to pull the reins back the other way, much harder. But you're going to start off the right way, and I'm still curious about how that's going to go. But yeah, how's that going?
Yeah, I mean, we have a beautiful little boy. His name's Enzo. He's almost 2 years old. So
Mm,
we've been doing it for quite a while now, but I think it's also in my mind, a fine balance because there are certain things that you can't control from a circumstance perspective.
yes.
Like we're going to Hawaii for a wedding in a few days, and like, of course you can't control. I'm not going to make him wear blue light blockers as a 2 year old. It's just not going to happen. So there's a fine balance always, but of course, the sunrise as much as possible. Tanning baby is something that I'm very passionate about and that I've been going deeper on in the past few years.
Mm, mm,
Light perspective, darkness at night, changing the LEDs for incandescence, all of these things make a huge difference. But I think that's a hill that I'm willing to die on, because a lot of people need to be educated on the child development front in relation to the circadian and electromagnetic stuff.
Mm-hmm. And
Profound.
especially all the non-native EMFs and all that is such an impact because they're not myelinated, they're just so much more susceptible. And we don't even think about like a baby monitor in the bedroom and like these kinds of things and how much that can be really damaging them, right? So much education that needs to be done because people are not aware of it. I mean, I breastfed my kids with my cell phone on blue light, regular factory mode, sitting there. Like I had no idea. And it would never even occur to me that that would be a bad idea. Like, because nobody tells people these things. You don't even think about it. Like your doctor's never going to mention it. So it's just like, that's a good education thing to be bringing to the table for sure, because I always wonder like what would my children be if that was the case? If they live that life at such an earlier age, like what would have happened? Like I'm just always curious, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and for us it was more important, at least in my mind, because he was a result of cesarean, like we had to get a C-section, and so we also did an emergency transport to the hospital from a home birth situation. So it was very hectic, but we had to do what we had to do. My
Yeah.
wife ended up having sepsis while she was in labor, so that was a very serious thing.
Yeah.
So I tried to be as strict and diligent about implementing those practices from an early age. And so building up the more of a tan, Enzo has blue eyes and blonde hair, so a lot more pheomelanin, a lot more intention into that equation. But
Yes.
it's definitely a thing that I feel like a lot of people are passionate about when they come across this work.
Yeah,
Mhm.
no, and the controlling the uncontrollable, like you only can do what you can do, right? There are things and there are extremely important times for modern medicine where it's life-saving, right? And that we need to call on that. Like we cannot live in these black and whites, we have to live in the gray. We have to be able to like just kind of go with the flow and like know the information, but then not be like so obsessive about it. Like you said about your son, like not wearing blue blockers on the plane, like he's going to be okay. Like he's strong, he's resilient. You give him all the right signals all the time, like he's going to be fine. But there comes a line where I feel like, and I think we go through this, we swing the pendulum as we learn this information. When I first learned this information, I was like so gung-ho, and it was like my way or the highway. And it was just like a lot on my whole family. Because it comes from a state of fear and you want to protect them, of course, but underneath that fear is love, right? And then you kind of like learn to be like, oh, I don't have to be crazy and obsessive about these things and everything will still be okay. like, you
And,
know,
and you realize quickly that the neuroticism ends up creating a lot of the
more
negative outcomes that you worry
yeah,
about.
more problems. And the force always meets the resistance, especially with I have teenage boys, I mean, you're going to meet a lot of resistance in those areas, right? And you have to do like this give and take and kind of find this beautiful like middle ground, I guess.
Well, we learn about how everything's energy. So our emotional state, the home that we live in most of the time, if it's anxious or fearful or angry,
Yeah.
that energy frequency is going to be as damaging or more so on our health than if we don't have a perfect light environment. So, right, and that's what a lot of people who've been around for a while in these fields that we're hanging out in is that, oh, actually the emotional realm is really powerful. And if we aren't attending to that, we could be doing all the right things and then we haven't been able to be with what's happening emotionally inside of us or what's been camping out like unprocessed and metabolized emotion that can be very undermining to our health and keep us in the cell danger response and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of different layers to this, but I just again so appreciate Zaid, like your passion and your how vocal you are online and you just, you put it right out there. And I think that's really what's required to be able to pierce. It's like people are so, you know what I mean? Like I live in a very sunny desert area and so people wear sunglasses all the time and it'll be literally dark in the morning, not even fully light out, and they have sunglasses on. So I know you guys can relate to this, but I have to quiet that inner voice in my head so I don't create my own emotional negativity. I'm like, why the hell are you wearing it there? It's not even that bright out. You know what I mean? And so it's like, and you do a lot of that education online. And I think part of it is we have to sort of shake people up because they're so asleep in this, well, this is just what we do. Why are you doing it? I think we need to ask questions. So how do you, I don't know if you get a lot of pushback online or how do you probably have people coming to you who are like ready to go and they've already cleared out all the BS in their head, but I just want
Mhm.
to know how you approach somebody who's like so shut down. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean it's difficult. It's I mean the whole social media thing, I definitely get pushback without a doubt. I'm very grateful to see that I get a lot more positive than negative.
That's good.
Depending on what rabbit hole you stumble upon, if you go down the modern dermatology rabbit hole, you'll get a lot of quacks out there. But for me, I think it's just about coming from a place of empathy as much as I can. I'm not going to say I'm the most empathetic person to begin with. It's something I have to work on. But I think just providing proper education from an objective standpoint and also displaying the passion within the work is going to go a long way. And so, seeing my growth on Instagram or X I think that's largely a result of that. And of course, it helps that, I'm posting a lot and whatnot. But for me, I think it just depends on the audience. Like I'm somebody who does view myself as kind of a warrior in the sense of circadian biology, and I want to go into the belly of the beast. Like, I just recently went on to I think I forgot her full name, but Dr. K, who's a plastic surgeon in Pasadena. She's definitely more centralized, but she is more open to these ideas. And so I went to
Sure.
her office, talked about some of the things that are misrepresentations of UV light, all of that stuff. And it's been very helpful. It's been very cool to see. So I think that it's just about showing up, entering the belly of the beast, tackling these ideas head on consistently day in, day out. And then from there, we make headway. Like there's a great book called, I think, the Structure of Scientific Revolutions by, I believe, Thomas Kuhn. And he talks about how often there's a heretic on the outside who sees what mainstream medicine is doing within a given subject. In this case, the discussion of UV light and skin cancers, all that. And the heretic provides some very interesting ideas. More often than not, they're wrong. But in my case, I really do believe that I'm right, and I'm trying to provide as comprehensive of a take as possible.
Mm,
But of course, it's going to take time. And eventually, there will be new scientists and new people who stumble upon our work, and they'll be like, oh, this is a much more holistic way of viewing this subject. And hopefully that changes the tide.
yeah,
Yeah.
it
I know
will.
you've talked a lot about it online about when people think sunlight causes cancer. So how do you respond to that?
Yeah, let's go there. That's what I was thinking too.
There are a lot of things to it. I firmly believe that sunlight does not inherently cause any form of cancer. You can talk about epidemiology, associational data, observational studies. Those are all very faulty things that the mainstream narrative uses to support their philosophy. But if you go deeper into it, okay, you talk about UVB creating vitamin D3, which is a potent anti-cancer compound. You talk about endogenous melatonin, both forms, a subcellular, the circulatory form that tie into the light and dark cycle being probably the most potent anti-cancer compound that we know of. Circadian disruption, been proven to cause cancer in human beings. Artificial light at night, same thing, but mainly through circadian disruption, maybe some other mechanisms. You could talk about sunscreen, um, the artificial manipulation of the full spectrum and what impact that has on the skin barrier and systemically. If you even go through all the research, I think there's a lot of contradictions and holes that you can find if you go deep enough. So from the circadian perspective, I just think that the mainstream narrative does not hold under circadian scrutiny because, of course, the mainstream does not educate themselves on circadian biology. If you go
Mm,
to the dermatologists or physicians, they're not taught circadian biology within their curriculum. And so that's
not yet.
problematic because it means that their entire epistemology is flawed from a first principle standpoint. So again, there's a lot of stuff to throw around, but it doesn't make any sense to me from a first principle standpoint.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And you know, it's actually my mom who said to me, she's like, "You're so tan." She's like, "You're gonna have wrinkles later." I'm like, "I'd rather have wrinkles than breast cancer any day." Because, we're likely to have more hormonal cancers and things like that. Sunlight prevents these things. It prevents all cause mortality. To me, I'd rather take the sun any day, or whatever negative effects I'm going to get from the sun. I'd rather take that any day, which is not. I don't believe that there's many over having something more detrimental or like dementia or Alzheimer's or things like that, right? Like I want to preserve my body as much as I can. I'm not really so worried about wrinkles, like it's just not the thing for me.
Yeah, and the wrinkle discussion really annoys me to a certain point because it's like there's such a myopic focus on sunlight. I mean, there's a lot of holes in that narrative to begin with, but
Yep.
there's no discussion of the processed food, no discussion of artificial light
Oh
at
yeah.
night,
Hmm.
no, sleep deprivation, and plus there's also not this fundamental discussion that you are going to age and you are eventually going to die. That's
Yes.
fact. And so,
Yeah. It's
you know,
normal. It's normal to get wrinkles as you get older. Like, sorry, it's normal that I've got some gray hair. Like, it's normal. Like, these are not things that we can prevent. We can't prevent aging. It's gonna happen. Like,
Yeah,
we
but they
can
wouldn't make
prevent.
billions of dollars off people. I mean,
Yeah. Oh
if
yeah. With the
we actually
Botox and the this and the that.
normalize, yeah, if
Yeah.
we normalize and validate the aging process, there's going to be too much money lost. So,
Well,
yeah, I have huge problems with the beauty industry, cosmetic industry, and then
me
it even
too.
ties into this narrative that the dermatologists push, which is this, the idea that melanin is a sign of skin or DNA damage. And I'm like, okay, if you go
Wait,
deep
that's what they
enough on
say?
that,
I haven't heard that
oh,
one.
oh, that's definitely what they say. It's like that's their basic assumption. And so,
Oh no.
from a scientific perspective on melanin, that's just completely false. It's anti-cancer, radioprotective, you go down the list. But then on a deep enough level, if you go into history, I think there's a huge portion of that assumption that falls in line with eugenics and scientific racism. And so that's something they don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole, because you're saying if somebody has more melanin in their skin, they're inherently more defective. So what does that
yes,
mean for African
Mhm.
Americans? What does that mean for Indian people? It's like, it's just so
brilliant.
ridiculous.
Great insight, Zaid. I
Yeah,
love
that is a
that
good
so
insight.
much. I
I
love it.
haven't ever
They're
heard
saying
that
there's a
before.
problem with melanin. Okay, well, if you're haplotype, right, whatever it is, 7 or 8, seven, I forget how many there are, then that's a bad thing. That's what you're saying. And I think that's really astute.
Oh, you mean Fitzpatrick type? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it goes to show how reductive and myopic their
Yeah,
understanding of this work is, because there's so much that they're leaving on the table.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
No, I haven't heard that before. That's pretty scary. Oh my goodness. To me, I'm like,
That makes
your
sense.
tan is a sign of health, in my opinion. I'm like, if the more tan you are, the healthier you probably are. Like, I don't know.
But
I'm
it makes sense. It's like anti-life, native,
Mhm.
indigenous, whatever, anti-natural. Like it makes sense as far as the bigger picture goes and what maybe these agendas that could be out there are. Zaid, since we have you here, I want to kind of, I sorry, this is a little different focus, but it's still relevant. What do you think of those glasses they just came out with that are like blue or something? You know what I mean?
Oh, for blocking
Yeah,
for
raw optics. They have
yeah,
these
yeah,
like
yeah.
UV.
Oh,
What do you think of those? Because I'm still like, what the hell is going on with this?
So that's
yeah.
like, so if like you're on the water or if you're skiing or like where the blue light could be like really reflective, that could possibly cause damage. But I'm not sure if that's, I don't know about you guys. I'll just jump in and just interject here. I used to be extremely photosensitive. I was the person who, if I was up at sunrise, which was probably never, that wore sunglasses every time they went outside. Like literally that I was like, it would be the cloudy day and I'd have the sunglasses on. Now I've been on the water. I was just on the lake. Spent the week on the lake, perfectly fine. Didn't need
Yeah.
sunglasses once. Never squinting, totally fine. Like it's fine. It's just, it's really, so I don't know. To me, I don't think they're necessary. Maybe if I was going from an extreme environment, maybe like to the tropics from where I'm like to that might be too intense. Maybe.
Mhm.
I don't know, skiing maybe? Go ahead. I'd like to hear your opinion.
And I've actually created content on, when Raw Optics came out with that, and I was very critical of it, because it ultimately it stems from a flawed, I think, philosophy. I think even people within the circadian space don't understand the whole picture. And so for me, they're relying a lot on Dr. Alexander Wunsch's work. I mean, he was actually working with them to create that product. And even
Yes.
Dr. Alexander Wunsch, in my mind, has some various blind spots. I mean, I think the demonization of UV light, high energy blue is something that even he has fallen into in terms of a trap. And so
Mm.
we just have to understand that we don't need to create these products to make more money, because ultimately that's what they're doing. They're
Yeah.
not doing it because there's some unique special circadian benefit to their glasses. They're doing it to continue their product line and turn a profit ultimately. And
Yeah.
so there are just, you have shade, you have hats, if you want to wear glasses every once in a while, who cares? It's not going to make that big of a difference. But the underlying philosophy that I have is that, of course, photo adaptation is something that happens at the ocular level. And so there are various things you can do in order to build that adaptation as you have. And yeah, either way, I'm just not for it. I think it's just bunk in my mind.
I agree. I did. I put on a hat. I did put a hat on at the lake last week, here and there. I was like, okay, I could use a hat now. I feel like it's just very intuitive. Or I sit in the shade. It's fine. You don't need to you don't need to be in the sunlight, the entire time when you're out at the beach. But, yeah, I think we can just be smart about it. And I like that you said that it is all about the product all the time. There are
Yeah.
certain podcasts that I just can't listen to. And I'm so grateful, Heather, that we're not like that. But there are certain podcasts I just can't listen to because they're just always trying to promote something. And I'm like, somebody will send me it. I'm like, well, they're just trying to sell you that. Like, that's what the whole podcast is about. Like, it's just not authentic. Like it's just, yeah, it's just
Well,
not.
they're trying to make a living, so there's
I
like
get
pluses
it,
and
but it just kind of,
minuses to
it
I
kind of
know.
bugs me a little bit.
I know, I know.
I
If
can
you
see
don't
why,
like
but again, with the raw optics, like again, they're demonizing high energy, shorter wavelengths like blue and UV again. Their messaging is quite literally doing that. And then they're basically doing the same thing. They're performing the same circadian sin as the centralized dermatologists and practitioners when they're talking about this stuff in that fashion, because ultimately they're isolating wavelengths. They're not seeing the full spectrum for the synergistic magic that it provides, and they're not looking at this work through a holistic lens.
No.
Yep, it's yep, reductionistic, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
So there's so many things I want to ask you, but I'm like, so what do you, I guess, because if just for personal reasons, like as somebody ages, would you say that because of the declining, mitochondrial function, what's that term? I forgot what it's called.
Heteroplasmic rate.
Heteroplasmy.
Thank you,
Heteroplasmic.
goodness sakes. But that declining heteroplasmic rate, like, do we need to be like, I'm not 60 yet, but it's, I'm getting there and I'm like, so do I need to be outside more? I need to make sure I have a better, like, I don't think there's as much room for error because I really feel that I need that support and I need to be as diligent as possible because, I can feel the difference between now and when I was younger. And so I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think as we get into older age, like it's just we have to understand that the human body is designed to receive these inputs in a very efficient manner, like in astonishingly efficient manner. And so as long as we have the right practices as we do, the body will take care of the rest, and hopefully we will age gracefully without any negative outcomes, God forbid. And so for me, I'm kind of someone who doesn't really think about it in those terms. I think it's just like, okay, we understand what to do. We do it most of the time, 80 to 90% of the way, and then the rest will be taken care of. So for me, I think it just depends on the context as well. If you have an older person who is dealing with comorbidities and, type 2 diabetic, all that stuff, of course they're going to need to be more strict about these things. But if you're healthy and you're aging gracefully and doing all these things, then it's just no problem. And I think it doesn't need to be thought about in general.
Did you have any like adjustment issues with your wife when you started to have more and more of a circadian lifestyle? How did that go?
Yeah,
I see the face.
I get clowned on a lot from my friends. They don't understand
Yeah.
really there's a lot of like meme culture, I guess, in my friend group, and so they're not really appreciating the message to the degree that I think they should. But either way, that's
When
that's
they're ready, they'll be ready to receive, and they'll just leave it like that. That's how I've learned to be. Like I used to feel like I needed to push it, and now I'm just like, if they come to me, I'll give my answer. That's it.
Exactly. And so with my wife, it's different because she's very open-minded. I'm very grateful for her in that sense and in many others. But it did definitely take a lot of time. And so her being, having blue eyes, having lighter skin in general, I think there's a gradual progression there. And so, the sunbathing is something that I'm educating her on. The blocking artificial light at night is something that we're very big on. And so I technically have a little bit more control over that domain in terms of the lighting and the lighting fixtures. And so I just make sure everything is just set by default in a right fashion. But I'm very grateful to have her, open-mindedness, and that's helped immensely because I can see how that goes the other way. I can see how, partners or a wife and a husband aren't really on the same page. And so that can create some kind of relationship havoc and stress. But very grateful that I'm not on that side of the equation and that
I've seen it many times, even in my own relationship, but in other people's relationships who are in this quantum, I mean, mine came from a very severe health crisis, right? So then it was like do or die. Like I would have done anything to feel better. Like you could have told me. So seeing sunrise and grounding and blocking off, that was like easy stuff, right? Like, cause I would have done literally anything to feel better. But yeah, I've seen that definitely go other ways and create a lot of stress in the relationship. And even in my own, I'm open to share about it. There's been stressful times that, because I think it's everything's a mirror. And like when you're saying, well, this is the right way and this is the right way to do things. And then they're like, well, I'm doing this. So this is really bad for my, like, so then they start thinking about like, well, the way I'm living is really not good. And then they start feeling really crappy about themselves. Right. So there's that too, plays into a role as well. But yeah, it's so multifaceted. But I think I think being the change, being like, is the best way to be. Like just be the person who does it and just step into that. And then if they want to, they can jump in on the train as well.
Yeah. And I'm very honest too. Like I will say that I'm sometimes the cause of the stress because I'm more obsessed about this stuff. And so I want to make sure
Yeah.
that my family's health is in check and all that stuff. And so I am definitely a source of stress at times. And I think that's just a normal part of being a human being. But
Yeah.
either way, I think as long as you have two people or multiple people who have an open mind who want to get better, all of that stuff will iron out. You'll improve upon your weaknesses. And from that point, you're all set.
Yeah.
What do you do for your nighttime light environment? What is your setup?
Mm.
I have Chromolux incandescents in all of the light sources. I have some incandescent bulbs that are pre-made by a company called Strainless Lighting, I believe.
Oh, I
Strainless
love,
Light or Strainless Lighting.
yeah. We
Yeah.
just had him on the podcast, the young guy who made that, who came up with that. He's awesome. Yeah. I love that light bulb. It's my favorite light bulb.
Yeah, for sure. Even adjusting the intensity is really big for me. And so I have multiple of those in the environment. But of course, I'm maintaining darkness. And so there's a few of those light sources on, but we also have a lot of beeswax candles from a company called Busy Bees
Mhm.
Candle Company, which is great in California. And so I'm just making sure to have all those things in place. And from that point, insomnia is not a problem. Going to sleep is not a problem. Tiredness at night is something that we experience every night. And I
Mm.
think that's largely due to the environment that we set up.
Oh, 100%. I had such bad chronic insomnia. It was so intense, Zaid, for like a year. And
Mhm.
changing my light environment was amazing. So it was such a benefit. And then Wi-Fi and all things like that, and removing all that was also such a benefit. So it's so great. To the gift, like when you lose the ability to fall asleep, the gift of feeling sleepy in the evening is like amazing. You're like, oh, I'm tired, and I just go in bed and fall asleep. And it's like when you lose that, it's tough. So
And
that
even some of my friends who are like complaining about insomnia and they kind of clown on me sometimes. I give them the blue light blockers to try on, and within 5 minutes they report feeling tired and they're
you
I
cannot
put two to
feel
two together.
you cannot feel awake wearing reds. I feel like it's hard. It's hard. Like
I don't even wear reds. They're too intense for me. I wear the oranges for sure.
when I was really sick, I needed reds at night, and I was like, I would be full asleep at like 7:30. And my body really needed that. It doesn't need that now, but at that time, it needed that amount of sleep, and repair. So yeah, it was great.
So tell us about your program. You have several offerings. You have a Substack, or right? You have a Substack? You
Yeah,
have an
circadian
8-week,
classroom.
sorry?
It's called the circadian classroom.
So yes, that's right. Circadian Classroom. You have an 8-week coaching program. It's not a group coaching program, right? It's an individual.
Yeah, individual. I haven't really, dipped my toe into the group coaching, but 8 weeks of work with, if somebody is deemed fit to join the program, then we go down the list in terms of it's a very comprehensive approach. So viewing all of the health fundamentals through a circadian lens, they're given an assessment from a lifestyle perspective, so I know what their lifestyle looks like. And then we go down the list with circadian health, light environment, sleep, nutrition, supplementation if deemed necessary, even blood work interpretation. There's a lot to it, but it's been very cool so far. A lot of men and women have joined, and I think everyone has really seen fantastic results. I've not had one single negative review because ultimately, if they buy in, if they're forced to pay, then they pay attention, and if they follow the work, they get results. So it's a very collaborative thing. The Substack is more a deep dive on the more esoteric or on the edge subjects like hyperpigmentation and
Mhm.
melasma and whatnot. But either way, it's just a fantastic kind of synergistic combo I have.
Well, I love
So
that they're
Zaid,
oh, I
okay.
was just gonna say with the coaching program, yeah, they have to have buy-in. So you definitely, they're all in and they'll show up and do the work. And I just love though that you said on your website if they don't get the results, then you'll give them a full refund plus $150. I'm like, you're not messing around.
No, I'm
That's
very
pretty
upfront about
impressive.
that. Yeah, because ultimately that's how much I believe in the work, and from the experience I have, like many different things can be resolved through this. So I have full buy-in on that end.
So you're not, so I guess because I'm a homeopath, and homeopaths tend to get people who have done everything, and you know what I mean? Honestly, I swear that me too. So I do get the occasional, I would say probably 20% of my clientele who are doing the circadian lifestyle things, and I go over the lifestyle and it's pretty good. Like it's good, but they're not, their health is still suffering. And I find it usually that's locked into the mental emotional, always in that case. And that can be kind of a tougher thing to crack. So you never get clients like that? That's just us homeopaths who get that?
I mean, I do get some like that. I think it's few and far between because I really do with Instagram and especially I think X is a little bit more definitely more advanced in terms of the people who follow the circadian work, but on Instagram, I mean, most of the time you have complete beginners. People
Yeah.
who don't even understand what the solar spectrum is like. And so when
I
they get
love when I get a beginner.
that's who I prefer to work with because it's just a blank slate and we can start from first principles. And so
Yeah.
that's who I prefer to target. And believe it or not, I've even received crap from people who are in the circadian space because I do target that audience. It's like, why wouldn't I? Because ultimately, that's where I'm going to get the most change in society. But either
Yeah.
way, I think it just depends on the person's circumstance. So, if you have somebody who's more of an expert in the circadian space, again, we have to address the other areas like nutrition or movement, training, sleep. All this stuff is integral to
Sure.
the work. And like, I feel like people come in with the intention of like, if they understand leptin, they understand the morning breakfast and all this other stuff with the circadian health, they somehow think that calories don't matter or that, macronutrient breakdowns don't matter or, macros are not a thing that they should focus on. Like all of that stuff is very important. So we want to be as holistic and comprehensive as we can be to get the most success in this work.
Yeah, no, 100%, a million percent. Yeah, macros is an interesting topic of conversation. I feel like, I've gone through this like transition where I'm like, I used to be so obsessed with tracking and then I like let go of tracking and then I like go back to it. And I feel like I kind of interchange that a lot, but you can definitely mess things up by overeating fats or by overeating in general. You can definitely mess things up by overeating carbs. I mean, obviously, especially in the wrong season. And you could definitely mess things up by undereating. And I get a lot of clients of that in the women industry. And that's one of my part of my story as well. There is an obvious correlation in my story between my chronic illness and the years preceding that being in a calorie deficit for like 3 years. Like
Mm.
that is going to cause chronic disease inherently. You're going to be in the cell danger response. You're going to have lack of nutrients and all the things. I mean, of course, I was eating fruits and vegetables and not thinking about glyphosate. There was plenty of other factors, right? Nothing about light at all. There was lots of factors, but I do think that's an important piece. So, you can't just be like starving yourself either. So sometimes checking in on macronutrients and micronutrients and what you're consuming is really important too. So
Yeah.
there's so many pieces of the pie and puzzle, and health is really just so holistic. Is really the thing.
Which is also why I can resonate with, everyday people who aren't really interested in this work as to why it's so overwhelming. I totally get it, but I think that's why we should be grateful to be ourselves and to be in the arena that we are in because we can guide those people to positive outcomes through a more comprehensive framework.
A
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely. Well, I'm happy to hear that you're working with Women's Aid, and there's definitely a niche to be had for helping menopausal women who are doing all their circadian stuff and they still have like the weight issue. That's a huge thing that needs to be, I don't know, addressed with the combination of circadian and other factors. And I think you'd be well positioned to do that. I know it's like, of course, a woman would be great, but you can do it as well. So since you're working with females, this is something to consider. But anyway, I know we're running short on time. I want to see if you would share with us like your vision for your future. Because you have a lot more time that you can evolve with this, and I'd love to know what your dreams and vision is right now.
Yeah, I mean, what a big question. I think ultimately I kind of don't really put too much stock into like thinking about the future. I think that I'm a big believer in just following what most resonates with me in terms of the work and things will fall into place. But I will say on the education front, definitely getting heavier into biophysics is something that I want to do. Because like
Mm.
if you look at Cruz or any of the other people who talk about it at a deeper level, it's like it's just so much higher, it's such higher level work. And so that's something that I think I'll go into. It won't necessarily inform my work with clients because I think the fundamentals are the fundamentals. You don't really need to know about biophysics per se. But outside of that, I think working with different companies, being on more advisory boards, um, I'm certainly passionate about getting circadian lighting into these various form factors within like offices and buildings and schools. So that's something that I think I can go into. But either way, I think the education is going to remain constant. And so from that point forward, it's just who knows? Who knows where we'll go?
That sounds amazing. I love that. The passion as a former teacher, it's like, oh my goodness, if we could change the school system with just even the lighting that like what that would do, right? So it's just amazing. I love that. I love that idea as well. Good one.
But the
Yeah.
battle ahead is going to be very tough and very, it's a very steep hill. And so I think that's why the education piece is going to be so important going forward.
It's so true. It's like, I guess because sometimes we're in our bubble, right? Of like all the people in the circadian world. I'm like, oh, it's people really know about this. Like it's really expanding, and it is expanding. It totally is expanding. But then you go out to like the real world, and you're like, oh my God, nobody knows anything. And
Yeah,
you're
they
like,
don't know.
I'm like, oh my God, we have so much more work to do. Like that's what I feel when I'm in those environments where I'm not around people who just have no idea of this stuff. And I'm like, wow, I just forget. And it's like people who are in my circle who have been around me a long time, it's like they're solely still oblivious to it. I'm like, okay, well, when they're ready, I'm here. That's all I say is I just keep telling myself that. And I just and just keep educating, just keep putting it out there. That's why I will never stop talking about light because I feel like it changed my life. So then I feel like I keep saying the same things on Instagram, but somebody new finds it and then another new person. And it's just like this ripple effect. So just keep pushing it out, just keep pushing it out. And I think I appreciate that you're doing the same because it needs to get out there. Right. So
It's a lot of fun too, I try not to get wrapped up in the whole like big picture kind of thing or conspiracy world because it's overwhelming and it just detracts from the work. So I try to add different twists to the content, make it look beautiful, add different pictures and play around with that. I think it's overall a joy.
We do a
oh,
phenomenal job, so thank you for that
yeah.
service you provide to everyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any final parting words of wisdom or anything you want to share with our listeners before we adjourn?
I think, just enjoy nature. I think that's ultimately the biggest thing. And I don't spend as much time in nature as I want to. And so that's something that kind of annoys me, but it's something that I'm gonna work on. But either way, I think if people can just spend more time in nature, like you just can't go wrong with it. And it's just gonna be a more fun time and you'll be better in your relationships, you'll be a better person, you'll think about the bigger picture and everything will be better as a result.
Mhm. I
Absolutely.
agree. Well,
Thank you
really
so much,
appreciate you
Zaid.
coming on, Zaid. Yeah, thank you so much. We had a pleasure chatting with you today.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. It was awesome.